today. From Luke 15, familiar passage if you know anything about the Bible. If you don't, I'm going to make it familiar to you before you leave. Verse number 22, and I'm going to read to verse 24. But the father said to his servants, bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring hither the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found, and they began to make merry. Just for a little while today, I'm going to preach to you about the best robe. Turn to somebody and say, the best robe. Wait a minute. We're not talking about the good robe. The best robe. Yeah, tell them that. Okay, you can be seated. Oh, it's one thing to get a good steak, but when you say that's the best steak, oh, that's a different thing. It's one thing to say, I think he's a pretty good doctor, but when you say he is the best, that's another level. There's no comparison. That's the incomparable physician, in other words. Nobody is matching this. What happens in this story, you know, I had already started preaching, and somebody gave me a Cruden's Complete Concordance of the Bible long before Google. Right now, if somebody gives you a scripture, you can just Google it. There it comes, Bible Hub and Bible Gateway and all the different things. Got all the translations. It's so easy. But back then, you had to get this big, heavy thing out and open it up, you know. And I remember, because I had heard all my life about the prodigal son. And so I was looking up the word prodigal, which happens not to be in the Bible except in the footnotes. And so I was looking it up. I thought, man, I know it's here because I've heard it all my life. I'm trying to find the prodigal. And along the way, I discovered this, and probably you already know what the word prodigal means. I'm sure it's in your user vocabulary and you're using it on a daily basis. But it means someone who spends money or resources freely, recklessly, wastefully, and extravagantly. That's what a prodigal is. I mean, maybe they're kind of like bougie or something. I don't know if that would be the term for it, but it was extravagant, but it was a wasteful thing. That's what a prodigal individual is, and that's not what the Bible even called him. It's the whole story, and Jesus tells this story. I want you to get this. This is not about something. He's talking, and the relationship of what happened in that story, and I didn't read you the whole thing because it's several verses. I'm just going to give you the condensed version of it so that you'll understand it a little bit. That whole thing that went on, the Lord was trying to liken it to the way he operates, what he does in situations where people that are away from him come back to him. Now, let me be careful when I say this. I'm not talking about you being out somewhere in a world that's lost and doing God only knows what all, and you're living some terrible life. Sometimes you can get away from God in the church. Sometimes listen, even in leadership, sometimes you can get so involved in doing the work of God, you neglect the God of the work. And so you start losing out. You get cold in the Lord, and you don't realize, I've been coming to church, I've been raising my hands, I've been helping, I'm a part of one of these teams, and I'm doing all these things, but I just lost my relationship with the Lord. That can happen. That doesn't mean you take everything and extravagantly, you just go out and waste everything that God has done for you. That's not what it really, I'm not trying to hit you with that today. But I'm just trying to tell you that there's more ways of getting away from God than to just be out there somewhere. And I served the Lord when I was a kid, or we used to go to church. And I'm going to have to tell you something else. And please don't judge me harshly for this. But I'm not talking about getting back to church. See, I think sometimes this throws people off. They don't want, they've got a problem with the church. I'm not talking about this church, maybe it is this church, but I'm talking about just church. Because, church folks, sometimes you find out some of them they're just bald-faced hypocrites. They're supposed to be living right. They come on Sunday. They got all the stuff, They've checked every box. They got their hair up. Looks like an explosion in a mattress factory. And they're doing all the things, They think everything. Their sleeves are down to the knuckles. And their dresses are all the way down. And everything is right. And they got everything like they're supposed to be. And then you find out they live like the pure devil. Because they're gossipers and they're haters and they're unfriendly and they come against people and they're divisive and they bring division and all of that, but they've got all the boxes checked and it really looks good because the outer part is the easiest to fake. I said the outward appearance is the easiest to fake. Jesus even covered this when he said, I'm going to tell you what y'all are like. Y'all are like whited sepulchres. They paint the outside of the tomb, but inside they got dead men's bones in there. He said that's the way those hypocrites are. So that's why some people don't like the church. Any denomination, every denomination has somebody said, I'll never go back to that church. And I'm going to tell you, in some of the situations people have been in, I don't blame them one little bit. But that's not what I want to refer to today. This prodigal, this guy that took what he had, he got his inheritance early. He was the younger brother. He takes everything that's coming to him at a later time. He gets it up front because he's got something in his mind that's better than what Dad had planned. And so he goes out and he takes it. He goes to a far country. He can't wait to get away from all of this. Just too many rules and regulations and too much restriction. I need to handle my own money and be able to make my own way. And obviously he wasn't that good at it because it wasn't too long till he didn't have anything. I mean, he thought that if I get the money in my hands, I'm going to make some investments. I'm going to do some things. Dad's keeping me back. I'm only getting a short allowance, and I got to get in there where all this is. So whenever he got it in his hands, and he was out there having a big time, and as long as you're out there paying the bill, you'll have as many friends as you want to have. Just pay the ticket. Just pick up the tab at the end of the night. And that's what he was doing until one day he happened to look at the checking account and realize I don't have anything left. And the place I'm living in, I'm not going to be able to pay for it. So they threw him out and he was living out there without anything. And all he had to eat is whatever the hogs were eating. He was feeding the hogs, but he was eating their food. Imagine that condition. He didn't plan that. He didn't really think this is where I'm going. He didn't see that coming in his future. But then he decided while he was eating that. The Bible said he came to himself. There's nothing better than this coming to yourself part. Where you're just rocking along and you think you've got the tiger by the tail, and then you realize, no, listen, I don't have the tiger by the tail. This thing's got a hold of me and I can't get out of all this stuff. I need to turn my life around, but I don't know how to get off of this train. And it just keeps taking me to another place. But when he came to that spot, he got to thinking about home. He got to thinking about what home was like. He got to thinking about how it was. He said, you know, there are servants in my father's house that are eating better than me. They've got bread enough to spare, and I'm eating hog food. I can't understand why I'm like this. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go back to the father, and he was having this conversation with himself. He said, I will tell the father, make me one of the hired servants. I'm not trying to come back and get an inheritance again. I'm not even trying to come back and be a son again. All I want you to do is just put me in the servants' quarters because they're eating good. They've got a shower in there and they've got clothes on their back, and I'll just serve. That's all I want to do. Which if that would have been his attitude at the first, he would have been the ruler after a while. And so he gets up and he starts toward home. There's no record in the Bible where the father came to get him. You know, started looking for him. Hey, have y'all seen him anywhere? Wanted posters up. Hey, have you seen this guy going to all those dens of iniquity? Hey, you seen this boy? He's supposed to be here somewhere. He never did that. But he never stopped wanting him to come home. He never stopped looking out for him to come home. He never gave up on him because he thought at some point, the son I love could come back. He had a son. He already had an older son there. That older brother wanted him to just forget that boy. He had already wasted his money. Just let him get what's coming. But that's not the way the father felt. Because that day that boy came hobbling back. He was barefooted and filthy dirty. And he didn't even have the cloak that he needed to even have on to cover his body. And when the Bible said, and when the father saw him afar off, he ran to him. I'm going to say this to you right here, right now. Maybe somebody that'll watch this service right now or maybe a little bit later on. When the Lord starts reaching out to come to you, you're far away from him. You think you're so far away from him today that you can't ever get back. But before you ever got in your automobile today, the Lord God Almighty started running toward you. He has been on a quest for you, and he runs to you. Because the Father always gets there first. You don't get there first. He gets to you first. He's out there in the field. He hugs him up. And he starts trying to say, Father, just make me, I'm sorry. I'm no longer worthy to be a son. Just make me one of the hired servants. Shut up, boy, get here and come home back with me. And when he gets in, puts his arm around him and starts going back to the house, the servants come running out. They're excited to see him. Hey, what are y'all going to do? You want to put him back here in the servants' quarters? He said, no. I want to tell you what to do. Go get the best robe. Get the best robe and put on him. Get some shoes and put it on him. You see, slaves and servants didn't have shoes, but the son needed shoes. He said, go get shoes. He's not going to be barefooted. Put a ring on his hand, which gave him his authority back. Get the fatted calf and let's kill it and have a celebration. My son was lost, but he's back home. Woo-hoo! My Lord. If you were given a choice today for the best robe of life, what would that be? We think of it as money. We think of it as success. We think of it as having things. Listen to me, things never satisfy. Having abundance doesn't really satisfy. It may make life easy. It may make life better, but you can't hardly cover yourself for that. It's like the man in the scripture that said that the bed was too short for him to lay down on, and the garment he was trying to put on was too small for him. So when you start trying to have success and start trying to have all these things in life and think you got your act together, it's like the coat doesn't fit you. And when you lay down in bed at night, you're on a bed that really doesn't fit you either, because what you need is to get the best robe. You need to get back to where the Father is. You got to get back into His care. You got to get back where He will do the things for you. And when the Lord begins to bestow, as He did in this scripture here, He doesn't start with the very lowest things. He starts with the best. God doesn't start with the worst. He starts with the best. The son wanted a servant's garment. He thought, that's really all I deserved after wasting my chance. That's what seems to be the best. Just have a little something, just to get in somewhere. Let me just sit at the back. You know, I've been away from God. I've done a lot of things. Listen, there are people that think that when you get away from God, you do a lot of bad things. I'm not going to get a show of hands and just be everybody, but everybody's done a lot of bad things. You know, even students, even children. When I got the Holy Ghost at 6 years old, man, I had 6 years of sin, had to get washed up. But the longer we go, we got that stuff. It just goes along with us. It just piles up and just piles up all the time. And we've all had those situations where we failed God and we said we weren't, and we failed Him even though we had great opportunities. We wasted opportunities. We wasted our time, and we've done that many different times. But in that time when you feel like you just wasted everything, and that the Lord wants you to get in the back and really just keep your head down and don't do anything, because I want you to stay there, because you don't have to work your way up to this. That's not the way God works. You don't get down there on the lowest on the totem pole and then kind of work yourself way up, in time to come. The minute that boy was wrapped up by that father and he started back, he started giving commands of how this was going to be. Go get the fatted calf and let's celebrate. Go get the best robe and put it on him. Get shoes on him. Get him the ring of authority back on his hand, because we're not waiting on another day. He may have wasted everything, but I'm fixing to waste my goodness on him. Oh, yeah, I won't tell you, I didn't write this down, but I had to throw this out. The elder brother did not like it. Oh, no. When the celebration was going on, he wouldn't even go in. He said, look what he's done. Look at all this. I've been here the whole time. The father came out and said, come back and celebrate. Your brother was dead and now he's alive. And let's get back in here and celebrate. The Bible said he wouldn't go in. He said, I've been serving you all this time. And he's been over there wasting it. He's been with harlots. He's been in the bars. He's wasted all the money that he had. And everybody's celebrating for him. And he said, nobody's been celebrating for me. And he said, son, let me just talk some sense into you. That while he was wasting everything, you were right here. You had all the benefits. You had all the blessing. You had everything at your disposal. Everything that's coming is going to be yours. This is a time for you to celebrate, because you didn't waste anything, because you were the one that stayed right here. Everything I've got is yours, son. Oh, there's times we head out to the far country, even if it's in our attitude and spirit. It may not be in a lifestyle. It just may be in our just pulling back from God. You know, I've had people say, well, they got away from the truth, and, you know, they got away from the truth. And I heard somebody say this one time, and it made a profound impact on my life. I thought to myself, when he was telling me this, I thought, I've seen this many, many times. They said, this pastor said to me, he said, are people really leaving the truth, or are they trying to get away from the people who's supposed to have the truth? What do you think about that? There are times people are not leaving truth. They want to get away from the people that are supposed to have it because of the way they're acting, the things that they do, the way they treat people. We talk about love, but we don't extend it. We say that there's mercy, but we don't extend it to anybody. You know what the Bible even tells about this? The Bible said that you may have unfeigned love for the brethren. That's love without pretense. That's love without condition. Do you just love people because they love you and because they're doing everything you want them to do? Or can you say, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you've gone through, I still love you. My love is unconditional. Hey. Hallelujah. You're welcome. Get the best robe. Got the fatted calf that's been pinned up for a while. We've been fattening him up. Y'all won't remember this because you're not old enough to remember this, but I can remember as a little kid that we didn't have the livestock show in rodeo. It was the fat stock show. The fat stock show. And I mean, those cows back then, fat was good. That's what makes ribeyes good. Fat. Now it's the livestock show and rodeo. He'd been fattening the calf up. For what? A celebration. Your son? I don't know if he said, that's for my son, don't touch it. Just a celebration. There's going to be something big happen. And I want that fatted calf that's pinned up over here, I want that calf to be ready when we get ready to have the celebration. Because the father had been planning, I believe, on his return. I believe he was speaking around the house. You know, when he comes back, I know he's going to be, but I want us to do something. I want us to have something when he finally comes to himself. Do you understand this today in the Spirit of God? That all the times you think that God don't know where you are, and you think that God's abandoned you because you haven't been as close to him as you used to, and you didn't feel like you used to feel, that God's just given up on you. He's been planning. He's got something pinned up for you. There's blessings that are in the pen today that need to come out of the gate. And when that moment comes when you say, God, I've been so away from you, I want you today. He says, open that gate up because I've been planning on this, and I've got something that's going to bless you, and that blessing's going to come and flood you in a moment. I was just watching the feed today before I came out in the office because I always want to share it like the pastor asked us to do, and I always want to share that because I want to care enough to share. And so I was going to share it, and Garrett was talking, and he was talking about, it's going to be a great message. Pastor's preaching on the best robe, and that's the first time I'd heard that, anybody say what I was going to be preaching on. I thought, man, that sounds good. I'd like to sit right up here and hear that message, the best robe. But you know what happened? The Bible said that when the water was turned into wine and he gave it to the governor of the feast, he said, well, you know what? Normally, that when people have well drunk, they put the superior wine out there and everybody's drinking it. But whenever they lose all their taste, they get the inferior stuff. You know, they've been having this stuff that's several dollars a bottle, man, and it's really good. But, usually what happens as time goes on, then it's like, well, get out the Boone's Farm apple wine. I don't think they had that back then, but let's get the MD 2020. Only reason I know that is because I see the bottles laying around at different places. Sounds bad to me, whatever it is. It's got 2020, and I'm sure it's not that it helps your vision. I'm sure of that. But he said, you know what y'all done at this thing? Y'all saved the best wine for the last. See, when you serve God, it starts out good, but it gets better. When you serve the enemy, it starts out the best and it gets the worse because that's the way he works. But with God, it gets sweeter as the days go by. It gets sweeter as the moment flies. All right, I'm coming to an end. I can't give you all this because all this stuff just coming in my head. But the Bible said that they had a better covenant in the New Testament, established upon better promises. See, it's not just mediocre. It's just not average. It's the best, given the best opportunity. And this is something I want to end with today. I want to end with this part of it. The Father met him in the field. I don't know how far he could see. You know, maybe a quarter of a mile. I don't know how far that he could see, but there was something in the way the boy was walking. There was something in the way he was just as he was traveling, or they don't usually get guests out this way, and he was coming from the way that he left, but now he's lost everything, and the Father saw him way out there, and he started running. The eagerness of God is amazing. Yeah, the eagerness of God. And so he runs. That song that they used to sing about the 90 and 9 and going out, the unashamed love of God, reckless love. I talked to those guys that wrote that song, and they were talking about how they had gotten a lot of pushback on that. I said, why? It's one of my favorite songs. And they said, well, there's certain groups that think that to say the Lord's love is reckless is wrong. You're giving him something like he's reckless. And I said, well, it's not. It's a figure of speech. It's the way surely there's artistic license. I hear it in songs all the time. So people just say things that likens it to something. I said, what I saw in that is that he's not calculating and he's not adding it up. And he doesn't have the tape measure and saying, now let's see if I can get that far. When that happens, the Father starts running. He doesn't say, let's see what he's got to say. Let's wait and see exactly how he's going to approach me. And let me just see what we're going to do. Let me just sit right here. Because he needs to come up here and kneel down and ask for forgiveness. The Father runs to him. And in that moment, he embraced him and let him know, I'm glad you're back. Now, you got to listen. You may know somebody like this, or somebody may be in this house like this. But I've always tried to get people back to the church. Come on, be at church, be at church. But the reconciliation took place in the field. He was reconciled to the Father before he became reconciled with the house. See, people may have a beef with the house. They may remember bad stuff from the house. Matter of fact, there was a mad older brother in the house. Yeah, he was already mad. And he's thinking, I don't even know if I can get there. I'd like to just be a servant. I'll go around the house and get to the quarters. And the Lord is telling him, you reconcile with me first. I'm just telling you, forget about joining back to the church. Get reconciled to the Father in the field where you are. Get a reconciliation. Lord, I don't know what all I'm going to do with the church. Because listen, you'll spend your life outside of God trying to figure out what to do with the church. You'll never have all the answers. Well, that one did that. This church believes that church does that. And this, fool on all of that. The Father is who I'm reconciling with. And when he reconciled in the field with the Father got him and started bringing him in because the Father was going to help him with what was going to happen in the house. So when the Lord puts his arm around you outside, in the car by yourself, at night when you wake up and you go kneel down and he just touches you brand new and it's like, well, what am I going to do about church? Well, just get reconciled with him first. Get that fixed up right there. Then he can tell you what to do with the rest of it. You're not going to make it if you're just falling in love with the church and with your pastor. Somewhere you'll have a falling out with the house. Somewhere you'll have a falling out with the leader in the house. But stay in contact with the Father that's over the house. Stand with me. Stay in contact with Him. Let Him give you the best robe. He's got the best for you. Oh, Pastor, I'm doing good in life. I've got a lot of things. God's blessed us in so many ways. I understand all of that, but there's an empty spot. You can't fill it with friends. Well, I'm not doing all this stuff wrong. I know that. I'm not preaching in drug addiction and all of that. I'm just saying that there's something always there that's empty. Well, I remember we went through so many things, bad things happened at the church, churches, all the bad stuff that happened, and people are wrong. And I understand that. Nobody's been more shattered by people than me. Man, if I couldn't hug any of y'all today if I went on by how people act. But that's not everybody. That's just somebody. But the Lord's never done me wrong. He's never treated me in a bad way. And so all I've got to do is be reconciled to Him. Let Him wrap me up. And then all those questions that I have, all those things that back there plaguing my mind. Well, I tell you what they did was wrong. I imagine it was. Well, the way they treated me, it was wrong. And probably so. I'm not saying that. It hurts. People you got confidence in can hurt you. The man at the gas station won't hurt you. But your friends can. So what am I going to do with that? Well, I'm going to get reconciled with the Father. I'm going to get my hands in the nail-scarred hands of Jesus Christ, and I'm going to let Him wrap me up as the Father of my soul, and I'm going to let Him handle me, and then I'm going to let Him do whatever He wants to do in the next steps that I take. Because if you just bypass the Father and try to go into the house, you'll never stay, because that elder brother will torment you until you finally quit. We were talking about this the other day at lunch with our team, and we were saying this, because there are times that people come back to God. They've been away from God for a long time. There are churches where when people come back to God, there's a little clock. There's people that'll press that button and start thinking, let's see how long it's going to take for you to get your act together. Well, they've been here 3 weeks now. I hadn't seen much of a change. I guess that you're the one that checks everybody's oil. I don't know if they really have it. Let me just check it. No, there's still a quart low. I got to get more. If that's what you do, then that just makes you a dipstick. That's not in the Bible, but it just popped out. I'm sorry. Strike it. But just constantly, I want to make sure that they meet it. Come on, how long? Man, they've been here a long time. They really had, I remember when they were on fire for God, and they've been here now 6 months. They've been here a year. They've been here 2, 3 years, whatever. And they look at them. Look at how they're doing. I just don't understand why people don't just line it up. Why don't they just go ahead and do that? Why don't they get their act together? They've given plenty of time for them to do that. And Jesus, at 12 years of age, He was in the temple, and they left Him and went a day's journey from Jesus in Jerusalem or Bethlehem. And when they did, they realized they had left the Lord behind. One day, they lost Jesus. What do you think people lose in 10 years away, or 20 years away, or 35 years away? If they can lose Jesus in a day, what do you think people lose that's been away from God for a mighty long time? They lost Him in a day. And you don't just go back and just get Him again. And then when they come back, they've got this misconception that I got to come back where I left Him. I got to go back to my Sunday school class. I got to go back to being like I was back then. I don't think I can do that. No, you don't want to go back to where you left Him. Go back to where you found Him. Go back to where you started and love Him again. Read His Word again and afresh. Don't even worry about where you left Him. Where are you going to start with Him? Start there. And He'll take you where you need to go.